they would use the conglomerate sales to come up with the total company
revenue.
yeah, billions or whatever they were selling, because Kurt was quite a promoter, and I said you could, you know, apportion a percentage of what their sales were to the total, and their guy. So they went with that. They went with that system, and it was a flop. I mean, it didn't work out.
It didn't help, huh?
So, but you know what? When there was a lot of pressure to bring in blacks to corporate companies to try to break that barrier of whose department did they pick to be the first one to have a black in it? Mine. And the young lady came in to replace my secretary for some little while or whatever. And I remember her coming into my office with a letter I had dictated, and there were some, and I don't know where it was going, because I can't remember why I said to her, you know, we can't allow this to go out unless it's just really perfect, because, you know, that we're going to be looked at. She was very accommodating, and so that was fine. Another thing, too, I had a temporary secretary whose husband was the traffic manager of, was one of the big 500 companies. And right about that time, there was an article in traffic management about the fact that they were having, they didn't let women in, see? And they were thinking about combining two trade associations or something. And I wrote a letter to the editor saying, and I got copies in my Carlson files, but I really raised hell. But I didn't want them to publish the letter because my immediate subordinate was a man, and I didn't want to embarrass him.
Uh-huh.
So I said, I don't want this letter published. Well, anyway, I got a call from and they wanted me to publish it, and I said, well, I'd have to amend it in some way. So we did that, and they did publish it, and eventually they got the thing going, and women were allowed in.
Uh-huh.
When I first went to these meetings, I would be the only woman, and now there were two big ones. There was one called the National Industrial Traffic League, and that was where the really big guys go, you know, Shell Oil, I can't even, you know, Kellogg's, the big ones anyway, General Mills. And then there was another one called the National Small Shipment Conference, and those were companies who didn't ship in carloads, you know. But anyway, I couldn't, I got into the one, couldn't get into the other. But there was a guy in LeSueur, Minnesota, who, his name was Love, that they put out the Green Giant frozen foods.
Uh-huh. That was their food line.
Yeah, anyway, he helped me get into the big one. And in the smaller one, I finally got in. There were other ones that they wouldn't let me in. I just really had to fight to get in, and one, I can't even remember all the circumstances anymore. Like this one of the men who was, you know, an officer or something, and I said, they had meetings and they had tours of various companies that were very educational. And I said, I don't care to go to your parties or your, you know, drinking bouts or anything, but I would like to be able to go on these educational tours. And so he took it in, but they wouldn't let me in anyway.
Wow.
So eventually I made all of them, but it took a long time. And then as I got up the ladder on those things, I wrote, there were other women traffic managers around the country, but they would, you know, hold back. What's that expression you said about the
Inyo.
Yeah. I wrote letters out to all of them telling them to come and join me, and some of them did.
Wow.
And so it got to be better. But yeah, it was interesting. But as I say, that gave me some insights into, you know, some of the way these politics and deals are made, and so I can kind of see into these things if you know.
From another broader.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I felt that was very educational, and even though, you know, I didn't get paid what a man did on the job, I still feel that it was just a tremendous opportunity, because it for one thing, it sent me off to school. I went to university at night, which was good, and I did get to know a lot of people who were at the top, and so it was good. And as I say, it carries over. And anyway, one day the man who was sent to do the work said to me, "Kurt wants to have I ever told you this story, Richard? He wanted to have more warehouses, and he wanted to have this private trucking company. And anyway, this man came up to me and said, he wants to put a warehouse in Des Moines. Can you help us?" And I said, "Well, I don't know anything. What basis is this on? Are we going to increase our sales?" And I really didn't know that much about it. I'd been out of work for 12 years. I was raising Richard and Billy and Jean. So he said, "No, we don't know, you know." So I said, "Well, I have no idea, but let me think about it." So what I did was I went into the files and looked at all the invoices, you know, the freight bills and bills of lading and stuff like that. And I did a little comparative chart. And it was absolutely not feasible. So I recommended against it. Well, to make a long story short, after they went through this whole thing, and there were months and months of their work and so forth, they put out a booklet, you know, telling what they thought, who should be axed and who should be promoted and so forth. I got such a high rating, and then this man who had asked me to do this project, he said, "You know, we submitted your project verbatim." He said, "We never do that."